And I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. We've got some great speakers to talk about how they survived the Great Recession. And even though technically I don't think anybody's declared we have a recession, if you listen to Lawrence Yoon's discussion the other day at the NAR conference, he said, all indications are that we're pretty darn close if we're not in one. GDP's been down. Obviously, unemployment is crazy. It's been 129 months since we had a recession, since the Great Recession ended. And generally, recessions come about every 58 months. So we're well over that point, kind of due. So the coronavirus kind of hit at the right time to cause a recession. So we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, these are good. We hope you can impart some really good skills on, or skills and ideas on to members on how they can get through rough periods, not only in their professional life, but also economically. So I'd like to start off by introducing Kel Svoboda to those of you who are listening today. Kel Svoboda is the chair of the GMAR for 2020. Picked a great year to be chairman. It's an unbelievably busy year. So thanks a lot, Kel. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, what a great year to be the chair, I would have to say. This is definitely one in the books, but I guess I'm fortunate enough that, from Cindy's to the world to Jeff Joseph's, I've been fortunate enough to watch their leadership. So I think this is a year where we kind of learn from the people before us, and yeah, it's very interesting. So I do want to introduce our guests, and I have to thank them so much. These are people that have had success in the business. They have so much wisdom to offer, and they're always willing to give to this association. So I want to thank Dale Marciniak from Remax, Rick Murry from Shorewest, Jim Summers from Coldwell Banker, and last but not least, Cindy Flemming from First Weber. So thank you guys for all coming on board. Really appreciate it.
Welcome.
Pleasure.
All right, so we're going to get started today. And here's the first question I have from you. So looking back at the Great Recession, how did the buyers and sellers' attitudes change from just before the slowdown, during it, and after the worst was over? Who would like to answer?
I'll take a stab at that one. When I look back at the last recession, of course, it was economic. It wasn't a health situation. And people were purchasing in droves, and they were putting down very little money and borrowing a lot against their properties. The bubble was about to pop, and when it did, of course, there were a lot of people upside down and in trouble. So I think back then, consumer confidence was high. People were very unafraid to spend. The thought was, I'll be in and out of this house in a couple of years, because transfers were really moving well. Right now, we don't have as many transferees, but back then there were quite a few. And then when that thing popped, it really, the house of cards came tumbling down, and our big conversations were how to graciously let people know how much money they had lost in their home, and how to work through those inequities for them. So very different then than it is now.
Interesting. Anybody else want to comment?
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, throughout the years, most people basically always saved money and, didn't use their homes as piggy banks or ATMs. And as the prices were running rapidly up, everybody thought, real estate would never come down. And unfortunately, it did. And we had a rude awakening where people lost their houses, and we had short sales, and, and it took a while for the market to recover. But different philosophy that we have today that we, learned from back in 2007 to 2010.
Rick, I see you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think there is something to the fact that today we exist in an environment that is totally different in terms of values. There's not the kind of crazy lending that was going on back in 2008. And actually it went back it started in 2003, 4, 5. That's when it really became. I think people are more in a better place here as long as they have their jobs. This is one real big thing we'll see in the future as to whether or not the job the economy and with people having jobs is going to have an effect on this marketplace, but it's not because of poor lending practices or a real super bubble in valuations.
Yeah,
I agree. I think, through that last recession, housing kind of led us into that recession. And hopefully right now, as we get through this, housing will pull us out of this, a little stalled position that we're in. But there's a lot of things with people having a lot of equity and the interest rate's still low and people still need a house. So you have that pent up demand to get your own house and, escape some of the rents that's been going up through the years too.
But don't you see that we are all still here? We've been through maybe how many recessions? First one was in '74 with the oil embargo, and we've had one little one maybe at the end of the high interest rate period in the early '80s, and then we had the '90s. We've all been through, but people still buy, people still sell. We're here not because we went out and got other jobs, because we didn't. We continued working because people still get married, people still get divorced, people pass away, people get new jobs, even, during recessions. And sometimes recessions give good opportunity for some people to be able to buy a house. I think we just, my personal opinion is we just keep on working the way you always have. It's a people business, and we continue doing it. I don't think any of us on this call really personally experienced any kind of recessionary period. Am I wrong?
Well, I will say I had a lot of compassion back in that last crash in '08 because my husband and I had just built a house and we moved in December of '08. And 3 weeks later, he lost his job. His company was bought, his department was eliminated. My business was down 40%. And all I could say was, I'm so grateful that I can live on the 60% I still have. So, and I will tell this to the new people, when you're in that situation, continue to remind yourself of the good parts of your life that you have and your business that you have and your farm that you have. And don't dwell in the negative piece of what you've lost, because eventually it will come around. And I thought, holy cow, yeah, I could carry the house on what I did, but with it diminished and without his stuff, it was, it was something to pause about. So I can appreciate what people go through, but I've always been glass half full. There's always something you learn when you're tested. And I think those of us on here have done this long enough that we have learned. And so just keep that positive outlook as you're going through this.
Rick?
Oh, go ahead, Dale.
I think all of us have gone through this, through the different facets of real estate through the years. And one of the things I expressed to my sons who are with me, and that is you have to, when the good times are running, you have to put acorns away. Not all of us are blessed to have a spouse maybe that's making great money or has great health insurance. We're in a position where we're commission based and we pay our own health insurance, and sometimes our spouses are stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads. And you can't just keep spending. I mean, you have to spend money in your business to grow your business, but you also have to have money set aside for situations like this.
Rick?
I'm coming to this webinar today with a little bit of a unique position because I was in management. I ran an office, and I ran an office for 32 years. So through that 32 years, I had some perspective as to see who would make it and who wouldn't, and who would take the advice, all of which Cindy and Dale and Jim have said exactly what needs to be said. It is, if you want to survive in this business and you want to make this career, it's not about the economy, it's about you. It's about what do you do. Sometimes we have to make choices to do a little bit more in times like this. And a lot of it has to do with prospecting. It has to do with staying in touch with our networks, the people that we know, the people who have been our past customers and clients. sometimes we let all that go to the wayside because we concentrate on what we don't know. You know, when is it going to get better? Instead of concentrating on what we do know. What we do know is that if you make more calls to your networks or your past customers, something good will happen. You know, if you do more prospecting in this time with people you already know and who already know you, good things will happen. You know that. So concentrate on those things.
You know, it's interesting that you guys bring that up because all of you, I think I learned from when I started, and 60% of our association membership now was not in the last recession. I'm a millennial, and I remember being 21 years old when the last recession hit and looking to you guys like, what are we going to do? And I bring that up to the people watching today is that history, we can learn a lot from history. And what they're saying is true. Is as time passes, making those calls and constantly following up helps you regardless. There were people that had tons of success that we all know as agents during the last recession. So it shouldn't change based on where the market is. I do want to bring up too, and I want your guys' opinions on this. So the last recession, there was a lot of permanent unemployment that happened because of the last recession. Where we are now, we have a lot of temporary unemployment. How do you see that different as far as where we're going to go from here because of that?
Well, it should bounce back a lot quicker. I mean, we do have a lot of unemployment in our service, you know, waitresses, bartenders, you know, coffee shop workers and things like that. And some of those basically won't necessarily be in a position to buy a house, but some of the other service people that are in the hospitals that are, you know, unemployed right now because they're not doing surgeries or doing testing, those are going to bounce back. And some of the other manufacturing will bounce back. So I think we still have a good amount of unemployed people that will come back very quickly, and you know, hopefully still be in a position financially to and you know, creditworthiness to you know, continue to, you know, move forward with their desired dream to buy a house.
Well, I would just add something. Because this particular recession is health driven and it's not economically driven, if you're listening to people, and many of us who are not visiting in our offices anymore at meetings, we're listening to all sorts of sessions online, and we just heard the NAR head economist yesterday. The thought is there is going to be a V curve in this thing coming back, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't tread carefully and with empathy and responsibility for sellers who are still concerned about COVID and sellers who don't agree with some that, you know, they still want to be careful. And you need to educate yourselves, I think, so that you are able to teach them, because we're all teachers, where this market is going to go and how you're going to help them through it and how you're going to help be responsible as those homes are shown. And there are still many homes being sold in certain price points. So the market's still moving, and I think it's our responsibility to walk responsibly and also be optimistic for our sellers instead of everything being doom and gloom. Let them know it is turning around. There are people waiting shortly to get their homes on the market now that some decisions have been made.
I agree.
Rick?
You know, I think that's a perfect point to build on, because we have to be in this kind of time. People look to people for confidence. If they look to the media, well, that's not going to happen. So if they look to us, that means we're in contact with them. We become their trusted advisor. Then when they need some confidence or they need some clarity, they're going to come to us, as they do, rather than sit and listen to the news programs, which are all over the map, depending upon your political stripe. So why not us? And, you know, we allow people to, if we allow people to focus on the advice they get from us, they'll be clear and they'll be more ready to move forward than if they listen to, you know, what is going on the nightly news.
Correct.
And you know what, I'm glad, let's follow up with that, because number one, doom and gloom, getting factual information from us as agents. Let's talk about social media and online. What are your suggestions for, you know, I'm seeing all different types of posts going on social media from agents all across the board, all across the country. What are your suggestions for them on getting out information to the consumer, or what not to do?
Well, I see a lot of the younger agents, no surprise to any of us here, who are using social media platforms in a big way for marketing their homes or talking about something, something coming up if they've got it under contract or in delayed status. Let's be clear about that. But the reality is that they are, I think, and they're saying, just sold another home, just sold another home. I think their messages to their spheres are things are moving. Let's keep them moving. Don't be afraid of this. And you can send out helpful tips. We do it. I do that through my company. But I think that people are looking for some of those signs that there's life out there, or people are doing virtual open houses, which is working for some, and that's a wonderful thing. So there's good in the new social media platforms. Good to be here.
Any follow-up that anybody would like to add on that? Rick?
I would say don't be political. I have to say that because, in this marketplace, 50% of our potential customer clients are on one side and 50% are on the other side. Wouldn't you want to work with everybody? So the more strident you become politically, not in your personal life, but when you're out there talking about real estate, I think becomes a negative rather than a positive. I think we want to attract those who, no matter what their political stripe, to us as their trusted advisor, regardless of politics.
I couldn't agree with that more. And I don't ever involve myself in any political conversation, whether it's social media or in my circle of friends. If somebody has a gripe, I'll listen to them. I don't make a comment. I move on. I'll hear them if they feel they need to be heard, but it has no place in my business and it has no place in my persona. So I just don't engage.
As you're trying to help and comfort people and show them that you're a human, caring human being versus I'm just a salesperson. People want the truth, and there's so much false news out there that you don't know what to believe or who to believe. But if you can keep yourself current on the housing information and what's happening out there, and you can basically post it, as something that you can verify as truthful, that's what people want. They're just fed up with, whether it's watching the TV or listening to the radio or listening to tweets or, other postings on Facebook is, what is truthful and what is not. And it makes your head spin.
I think that's interesting you bring that up. Jim?
I've always been in the belief that housing transcends politics. You're selling homes and you're selling people a lifestyle more so than anything else. And I think face-to-face, I still think is very, very, very important. And I think we kind of, I don't see people not wanting to buy housing. I think the attitude prior to the last recession was people were buying housing to make money. They don't do that. They buy it to put their family into, to have a backyard, for the kids to play in, to have a school system. And that's what they're buying. Privacy, a little bit of privacy too, and a place to share with friends and family. And I think in that regards, housing transcends, whether it be economic or whether it be this medical thing that's going on. I think housing transcends all that. And I think if we make that connection with people, I think we'll still do well coming out of this and even through this whole thing. I've always been very positive about real estate and still feel it's for all of us. I think all of us own houses, and that's why we do this.
Interesting. So, all right, I'm going to go to the next question then. So during the last recession, how did you spend your time? Did you concentrate on CE? Was there other education? What did you do to improve your technological skills?
In the last recession?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Nothing.
At that point, as people were losing their equity, you had to figure out what's a short sale. And you had to learn basically, how do you maneuver through that? And, not that you wanted to do that, but you had to be pressed on, what the situation was, and so that you could help a seller, or if a buyer wanted to buy a short sale, that you knew what it was, and you knew that, yes, I could basically maneuver through this difficult time to, get to an ending to satisfy the needs of, two people.
Rick?
That is so true. That short sale process, depended upon the lender, depending if they were a big box lender, a small lender, whatever. But I can just go back to during that period of time, I told our agents, and we focused on our agents, staying in touch, building your network, becoming the trusted advisor. You can do the other things. You have to do that, but you still need to build your sphere of influence and concentrate on that, because I heard this in one seminar. I've probably been to 300 of them, but the one thing that really stuck out to me was when somebody said, you choose to do things now that most people aren't willing to do, so that you can live the life later that they simply can't.
Very true. I will say that the last recession was different from this one because, first of all, we didn't have the same technology we have today. We just didn't. I remember just going back to the basics and holding lots of open houses, and I wasn't taking floor time then, but if you are, doing more floor time, doing more of that. But I remember doing many more open houses just to get out there and let people know, we're out there and we're available for those who could afford it. I remember doing a lot of just calling them to say, can I do a market analysis for you? Even though they maybe weren't selling, just to know where they were, because they were in uncertain territory and they just wanted to know, where am I with this house, whether I sell tomorrow or 5 years from now. Just offering that service as a way to stay in touch. And they were hearing bad things about all their neighbors' houses. And I thought, not everybody's going to have trouble. Some are, some aren't. It's economic. But this recession, we've got all of this technology at our fingertips, right? And now we can't do the opens. So it's a whole different way to look at it with social media. But FaceTiming with people isn't looked at as an impersonal thing anymore. It's looked at as a very positive way to get your face in front of someone and look at them instead of just talking on a phone. That in and of itself is amazing. That the fact that a lot of people are still going to continue to work from home after this is amazing. That companies will understand that that's not a bad thing. So to me, that's some of the positive takeaway from this. You can call and be face-to-face, and it's not looked at as a shortcut. It's looked at respecting their health and all of that and still wanting to stay in touch. So that's an upside.
That's interesting you say that. And we have one from one of our MLS board members, Scott Heyerdahl. He asked, can you give us an example of how you might encourage a buyer or seller to get into the market today with respect to their concerns over the coronavirus economic impact? Good question.
How they would get into the market? Dale, you want this?
So how would you encourage a buyer or seller to get back into the market if they have fear?
Well, it depends on the amount of the fear that they have. We go into some sellers' homes and we'll ask them basically, as soon as we ring the doorbell, do you want us to wear the mask? And a lot of them are like, no, I don't want you to wear a mask. And yet some of them basically like, yeah, if you want to, fine. So I'll put a mask on a lot of the situations, but and even buyers that you meet, you'll ask them, I've got masks, I've got gloves, do you want to go in? No, we don't want it. And then you have other people basically that, won't walk out of their car without a mask. So, everybody has a different level to it. Not everybody is, consistently saying, hey, we got to, follow this protocol. We're seeing it today just with the Supreme Court and everything. It's like people all over the board with this. If somebody is really fearful, I don't think there's anything you can do other than a virtual tour or, to either show them the house or show their house. And work through that. But you have other people basically that are just, we're ready to go. It's almost like they don't even believe that we have this problem.
Well, go ahead, Rick.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Oh, I was just going to say that one of the benefits of this, and to that initial question for Scott, is I think it's part of your buyer conversation when you're meeting a new buyer is here's what you expect when you buy a home, and now you're adding here's what's happening now during COVID. So whether you're comfortable with it or not, there are sellers that may feel differently, and these are the things we're doing, and we'll talk about those things. But I also have buyers who I've told, unless you think you're going to buy this house today, we don't need to look at it. There are pictures online. There's a virtual tour online. If you're going there and just saying, oh, I just kind of wanted to know what it was about, sellers don't want that today. And so that, respectfully said to them, really tears down what we are showing. That, if you're just saying you want to look, don't. Drive by it. See what the neighborhood looks like. You know what all the photos are. But if you really think you're going to buy it, I'm happy to take you to that home, and we'll go with masks on and whatever. That has been a big help, and people actually truly understand that. And it's also for their benefit, because they don't know what germs are in that home either.
And Cindy, I have to follow up. Oh, I'm sorry. I just had to say, Cindy, you are so right about this, because we are able to control the narrative now more than ever with our clients. A lot of times we always have new agents, they're running us around. How do you say no? I can't turn down this deal. But clients are understandable right now that, hey, drive around a little bit. One person, Larry Kendall, which most of us know from the Ninja, he talked about that. It's interesting now that we most likely will go to a place where you will walk in less houses. You'll see a lot online, but you won't show as many houses if you control the narrative. Mm-hmm. Dale? Sure.
I was going to say is with the technology we have today, we can do that. Think if this would have happened 15, 20 years ago, we would really be shut down to the point where, you're just not going anywhere. But they have the virtual tours, and, the amount of photos that we can put into the MLS or some of the other websites really gives us an advantage to help the buyers. Like Cindy said, do you really need to take a look at this home, or are you just curious to, where you can just look at it online?
Well, Rick, I'd like to bring up Rick. We're going to ask you this question. Imagine trying to get 4 generations of realtors to adopt this without something like this happening. Do you think it really would have worked?
Well, I would have to say that at least from my standpoint, our company is very progressive and has put online the do's and the don'ts and what we're willing to do to make the process a lot easier. I also wanted to speak to, I'm not sure if this is what Scott was talking about, but when he said sellers getting into the market, well, I think I had this conversation with a seller or potential seller yesterday about this is a time where still have multiple offers in most price points, and there are buyers out there. So why not, rather than wait until your competition grows and all of a sudden you're in competition with a whole lot more properties. This is an excellent time for them to list their property.
Absolutely.
Well, Rick, you're so political. I love it. That was a great answer. I've taught tech for 10 years, and I can tell you it's really difficult to get anybody to adopt things. So we usually get like a 15% adoption rate. So this has been an unfortunate event. It's fortunate that we are all adopting this very quickly. I mean, everybody is. They're going to this virtual sense. So thank you very much for that. I have another question for you guys. What technology, and this kind of follows up to Cindy, what you were talking about, what technology do you think will take hold of the market this time around? Not just the virtual tours, but what else? What do you think is going to take hold for the future, even after this is done?
Well, I'm doing way more offers to purchase online with my clients, with sellers or buyers, and nobody feels bad about it. We either FaceTime or we're on the phone going through our contracts together. I think back before all this happened, people maybe thought that was a lazy agent who just didn't want to go meet them, who just wanted to do everything online. And today they understand it's the same respectful process. It's just accepted now that there's a health crisis going on. And I think people, when they feel like this, it was seamless, it was a breeze, I even had somebody say to me, it can't be this easy. And I said, well, why would you think it was hard? And they said, well, the last time it was just a nightmare. And I said, well, I don't know who you worked with, but it should never be a nightmare. It should be a very good process for you. So I really, they're appreciative as long as you do it right and you take the time. So I see that surviving this, that people are going to be fine with that. I see people saying, go ahead and FaceTime me. I can't get over to that house. Walk me through it. and being comfortable enough that maybe on a first preview, then they'll decide what to look at. I see much more networking happening, and the younger people may be networking differently than our generation, but we're calling each other more, we're speaking to each other more. We always should be doing that, even the people who like to mostly text. Now is a good time for you to pick up your phones and actually develop social media the old-fashioned way, which is talking to each other, because you lose a lot in text and you gain a whole lot more in a phone conversation. And I think for the younger people, that's maybe a good lesson in this too, for them.
Rick?
I think technology is a way in which we move information differently, and it has changed tremendously. But unlike like in the 90s, I remember when everybody was saying you can sell homes out online. In other words, that was the wave of the future. And it never came to pass. The way we move information and how we make the logistics of the transaction more technological or easier has certainly helped. But there's nothing, as Cindy said, a personal conversation or a personal showing of a property, because people, it's a psychological purchase. People have to smell it, they have to feel it. And that hasn't changed because of what Jim said. People are looking for security. They're looking for how is their family going to feel in this neighborhood, in this house. All of this is so important. And I don't think that's ever going to change. Technology will make it simpler for us in certain areas, but there is still that people-to-people component that'll never go away, I don't believe.
Well, we hope.
Go ahead, Gail.
I think we hope that's the case. I know we have a lot of third-party vendors out there that would like to change things and have things, where buyers and sellers get together without having the realtor involved to really give them that comfort and give them that knowledge and expertise. And I think this is probably a good test to, we're seeing people who, yes, they're making offers on a virtual showing sight unseen, but I think that's a limited aspect of what people, who are maybe brave enough to do that. But I think, as we're finding that people still want to have that, that agent holding their hand through this transaction, because it is the most expensive transaction that in most cases are going to go through in their life. And as much as the Zillows or the Amazons and stuff that are trying to maybe change our industry a little bit by, I think this is a good test to say, hey, that's maybe not the case, and maybe they should think this over before they proceed.
I don't see that changing very much. I agree with you 150%. I've been showing homes this past week, and there hasn't been a home that I have shown that doesn't have like 8, 10, 12 showings on it in 2 days. So people are not buying virtually. They are buying by going in and viewing, looking out the windows and saying, this is where I want to have my coffee in the morning. This is where I want my children playing in the backyard. We're still seeing that, and I don't see that ever changing. We're not selling cars. We're not selling pants or shirts. Each home is individual. I don't care if they're identical. They sit on lots differently. They have different views. There's always something a little bit different about every home, and that's why I think it's so individual. And again, I'm still seeing multiple offers. I'm still seeing people wanting to get out there to look at the houses.
One thing I agree wholeheartedly with all three of your comments, and just wanted to add that, Dale, to your comment, are there third-party companies that want us out of the middle and just want buyers and sellers to negotiate with each other? It's funny because I meet so many people who say, I want you to be my buffer. I don't want to do this, or they're afraid to insult, and we're able to guide them through that and able to help them to not make a silly step that will hurt their negotiating strategy. That's one thing. So I don't see that whole thing coming to fruition, but I remember us all being told, oh, you'll be going by the wayside with technology. I had a young man call me last year into his home, and he was an engineer. And that probably wouldn't be the best personality that I mesh with, if I'm to be honest, because I look at the delta in a different way than they look at the delta. But I will say he had all of his Zillow numbers and he had all of his Realtor.com numbers. And I didn't even sell him his house, but I sold it the 2 times before him. So he wanted to pick my brain and find out the perfect mathematical equation to determine what he could ask. And in the process, he said, and I'm not sure why you feel you bring any asset or promise to this transaction. I'm not sure what your worth would be in this transaction. And I said, well, why did you call me to your home? If you don't think that I have anything to offer you, why am I here with you? And that shocked him, because I said, you know, buying and selling isn't an algorithm. You know, why did you buy it? It was the place you wanted to see your children play. It was near where your wife wanted to shop. It had the office that you felt good in doing your business. There is no computer that's going to take that away for you or offer that to you. That's where people come into play. That's what we bring to this. And it's one of your biggest purchases in your life. How are you going to do that with an algorithm? And it really blew him up. He was like, I never gave it a thought. So, you know, I think it's finding the right language and not being angry at somebody's silly, well, I won't call it silly. It was his comment. It was valid. It just made no sense.
Good comment.
You know, to go into that with you guys, because you're so right. And if anybody's disagreeing about these disruptors, we call them, coming in and taking on the business, look, the reality of it is that there's a huge market for this, and there's enough market share for them to come in and to grab some of the people that would want to alleviate the agent. However, we are seeing this prime example with this COVID situation. There is so much information out there. How do you decipher what's true, what's correct, and what's not? And you see this prime example, agents nowadays, when your clients ask you about the Zillow's estimate, for instance, they ask you, is that accurate? We still hear that same question. What people nowadays are concerned with, there's so much information that they're reading. They're going to go out and search themselves, but they still need the realtor to come and decipher what is true and what is correct, especially for their situation. Prime example, when Mike Rizika and I were at Inman this year, we sat there in New York before all this, and we got a chance to see all the tech coming and the potential disruptors coming to the market. And here's what really surprised me about this is a lot of tech companies and a lot of these disruptors are starting to realize they need to provide technology to help us support the consumer, not to take us out of it. Because what they're realizing is that the consumer still wants us there. So if you're going to create technology that helps them make this transaction smoother, you might as well give it to the agent so they can help their clients, and the agents will endorse it because we are a powerhouse with the spheres that we have. So I just want to bring that up to you, that it was an eye-opener to see that even tech companies are realizing they can't kick us out of the way. Rick?
You know, I totally agree with you, but that goes back to our initial thought, and what a lot of agents are wondering, you know, how can I traverse this pandemic or this COVID situation? And it goes back, I always say that this is a very simple business. It's just not easy. The principles that drive this business are very simple. And if all the things you're talking about is to be, that we are the ones who bring clarity, means we've got to be talking to people. We've got to be in touch with our friends, our neighbors, our satisfied clients. And if you're brand new into the business and you don't have a lot of satisfied clients, well then stay in contact with those people, you know, the people who are your friends, your high school, whatever the case might be. Get in touch and don't try to sell them. Be their trusted advisor. There's something you would, Cindy, you would know because First Weber's went through the Ninja program, is, you know, when we go to them and just, what do you want to know about your house? Do you want to get a value? Just a short valuation of their house, an opportunity to just sit down with them and talk to them about the market. Very simple little things. And you're not trying to list it. You're not trying to sell them. You're just trying to become their trusted advisor. Then we've done our job. And then recession or not, we're going to be okay on the other side.
You're right there, Rick. I mean, there's so many things today that make a young agents' career start faster, you might say. I mean, just think back when we were, starting. For us to communicate with the buyers and sellers, we either had to mail them, make a phone call, stop at their house, knock on the door. Where today you can do email, which is inexpensive compared to mailing out a farm. You have tweeting, you have, all the different websites to market yourself on that we didn't have. Again, they have to basically learn to not put their head in the sand, get out, get to the office, or get on the phone, or get out to your sphere some way, so that basically you can get contact with people so that they know you're in the business. You can't hide right now, thinking that there's doom and gloom. Now's the time to go out and focus on growing your business if you can. Now, financially, some people can't, and they have to go to look to your offices, some of your other agents that are a little more experienced, and ask, hey, is there something I can do for you? Can I do an open house when open houses will be available again? Can I post something some way that to showcase your listing, but yet I can maybe share some of the calls that come in on it, and and even the Zillow and the Realtor.com leads. I mean, you got to do something basically to keep on nurturing your business, nurturing your clients with either a contact manager program, or the old-fashioned, just have a notebook but be consistent that you're following up all the time.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Zillow leads. So do you, in your guys' opinion, do you think that in light of this pandemic, it's more about the quality over the quantity of the relationship, or does that even matter?
Well, it's both. Go ahead.
Always quality over quantity to me. I would rather work with 2 people who I know are real buyers than weed through 100 potential phone calls to find the one. That's just me. That's why I sell residential real estate, not commercial. I don't want to wait for a 5-year sales cycle. I want to sell and sell and sell and sell homes. That's the way I'm wired. So I would much rather be engaged and ready to go and help someone than parse through a pile of names to see if there's one in there. But I'll tell you, when I was brand new, I did parse through the 100 names, and I did knock on all the doors, and I took every Sunday and did 2 opens, and I did all of those things. Now I'm just fortunate that the way I've grown my business is to a point where I can choose quality over quantity.
I have always tried to be, as I established my business through the years, being a listing agent. I prefer to work with sellers. I think it's easier than, chasing buyers, through homes and everything. But I've learned that we're kind of like a chameleon in this business. There are buyers markets and there are sellers markets. And when it's a seller's market, you'll go after listings, and you try to get yourself more comfortable in doing presentations. When it's a buyer's market, you have to learn basically to put your buyer's agent hat on and start working with buyers, because the listings aren't selling, or if you control the buyers, you have a better chance of earning an income than if you're working with the sellers. But it reverses itself. We've gone through these markets time and time again. Things change, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. But you have to basically be educated in both aspects of it to survive in this business. And those that survive during the hard times will be the stronger agents down the road. So,
Rick?
With present company included, I have to say, as I've observed over many, many years, what makes somebody successful and what makes somebody maybe mediocre or whatever, it's do they have a routine? Are they doing the same thing over and over, maybe expanding that routine, but their routine is the same? And you would know, from Ninja, what you focus on expands. So if you focus on, and that's good news, bad news, if you focus on your routine and you focus on doing the same things on a regular basis, you're going to see good things happen. If you focus on the news and you focus on the economy and all the negative things we're hearing, well, that'll expand too. And that's pretty much all you'll hear. My wife and I had decided to purchase a car not too long ago, and it never crossed our mind. But once we decided on a specific model, we went out, we were just driving around. That's all we saw. That's all we saw on the road was that model car in that particular color, because that's what our mind focused on, and it expanded. As an agent, same thing happens. It's how we're built.
I'm glad you bring that up, because here's the last question I have for you guys. So we're 60 plus days into this. There's a lot of agents that continue to work. There's some agents that stayed home. There's a middle ground with there. But all of it, there's a sense of grief that has overcome a lot of people. There's a stress, and there's a stress because when you're in this business and you're constantly dealing with other people's problems and negotiations and finding business, you generally, when you have an end in sight, you have a vacation planned, you have something coming on. Well, a lot of vacations got canceled. So there's a sense of stress and a reaction that's happening that generally wouldn't happen in a time that was pre-COVID. So what advice do you give to someone that is feeling the grief right now, or is so stressed out because they don't have an end in sight for them right now? Is there anything you could offer them based on your experience?
Well, I'll just
Cindy?
say, eventually this too shall pass. And those probably sound like, not very kind words, but honestly, it is a cycle, and we're going to get through it. And if your family is safe and your family is healthy, some people aren't able to pay their bills, and I feel for those people, but for those of you who do have someone maybe with a regular income who can carry your load, and now you've got kids at school that you're homeschooling, which is, I never had to deal with that. I can't even imagine what that's like. But get your work clothes on when you get up during the day. Get dressed like you have a purpose in your day, whether you do or not. Get your head thinking, this is a day that I need to be ready for something. Don't sit in your PJs all day. Don't slouch around. Get ready to work. Maybe that getting ready will keep you in the business cycle of, let me just make so many calls this morning. Let me go take a brisk walk to clear my head outside. Maybe you take your kids outside for a walk, or kicking a ball for Phi Ed for their school thing. Do something to keep you engaged and keep you physical, and try to keep your head down and focused on certain things per day, and make a list and check things off. And just do that. Just keep doing that, and keep making those calls to your networks of friends, or work your church, or work your whatever your social circles are. Just continue. And as Rick said previously, you don't need to ask people, do you want to sell your house? But hey, there's a lot of stuff out there. People are talking everything's becoming political. If you ever want an opinion on your house or what it might be worth, even if you're going nowhere, I am happy to help you. I have a plethora of knowledge I can share with you. I could even give you ideas on what to do in case you want to sell your house in the next 2 years. If that's ever of help to you, let me know. Maybe that just gets your foot in the door and gives you an appointment and a market analysis and a chance to talk to them. And maybe you leave by saying thanks, and someday when you're ready, I'm ready. And if you ever know someone in the meantime, have them call me. All of that stuff is garnering business, even though maybe it doesn't feel like it is, but you're laying that groundwork. That's what I would say.
I think excellent point there, Cindy. And I think the aspect that think Ed, we're going into, May, June versus November, December, where things really start closing up. People can't walk because it's too cold. Or so. I mean, it's a great time if, like I said, just to go out and take a walk, go to the park. You can keep your social distancing and stuff, but just clear your head a little bit and then get back to work. Sticking your head in the sand and listening to CNN or Fox or whatever channel you go on will just get you more depressed, and tune out all that garbage.
I think getting back to Kel's question about how do you help people who are stressed out, and I always think that it's more important to ask questions and listen more, rather than tell them what the process is. You can do that eventually, but I think it's important that you sit down with someone and say, what do you want to accomplish? When do you want to accomplish it by? Do you see any roadblocks in the way between now and then? And then shut up and listen to what they have to say. And they'll tell you if they're stressed out about something, or they'll tell you so you can get them through the process after that. But I think it's very, very, very important that you listen to people more and ask more questions.
Rick?
I just want to piggyback on that, because sometimes we listen to respond. You know, an active listener is not one who listens to respond, but we should be listening to understand. And when people get a sense that we're listening to them to understand how they feel, then again, it's very easy for them to come back to us as a trusted advisor. And they'll come back again and again because they know that we're actually listening, not just waiting for them to stop talking so that we can respond. It's, I think, the other part of the question was, how do we help people? I say, you know, let's move forward. Even if it's an inch at a time, let's move forward. Let's not look in the rearview mirror. That's not going to get us too far going forward if we keep thinking about where we've been. Let's go forward and see where we can become.
You know, I can't thank you guys enough for even bringing this up. And when we started this year, even at the gala, our goal was to provide our members with education on the history. Our goal was to help this next generation of leadership understand where we've come. And when this all started, all I could think about was the loss of the grief of not being able to do the events that we wanted or have the travel that we want. But now I'm looking at this as that we've gained so much, and the ability to have events like this and for you guys to go out there and educate the rest of the association. Thank you guys so much for bringing this up, because you're so right. We can't look at what we've lost. We have to look at what we've gained. And if it's the time with our families, if it's the time for education, or just in general time for ourselves to understand, you know, how is this going to go for the future of our businesses? What makes us truly happy? I can't stress enough to you guys that you guys are a part of the reason why some of us are here doing what we do, is because of what you guys have given back. The people that are on this today, if you have questions, reach out to them. They're always willing to answer questions. Dale has answered many questions about parenting to me. I've had Cindy answer questions. Not one of them will get you off the phone in less than 5 minutes. So feel free to reach out and ask questions to every single one of them. I think that as an association, you know, I can't help but thank Mike and GMAR for everything that they're doing during this. They really pivoted our operations and made sure that we're providing this. If any of you guys have insight or suggestions on what we can do more to provide to our association during this time, please let us know. Like Cindy said, this too shall pass, and hopefully we are all better prepared and better professionals because of it. I do want to bring up one more thing, and this comes to the social media and just the overall factual information. Now more than ever is not a time for us to be decisive. You know, we have to respect that everybody is going to do their business in different ways. And some people want to practice their business, other people don't want to. It's not up to us to create those arguments online and show the consumer that we are divided. I think a very strong message coming from Realtors that we're here to help the communities, and we're here to continue on making sure that people get what they want out of real estate. I think that's an important message. So please just be aware of the messaging you are doing online, and let's respect everybody in the business that they practice. So thank you guys, everybody, for coming on board today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Cal.
Very much.